Hey everybody, welcome to the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup, where I think in the United States, it's safe to say we're going through some crazy times. So this is a nice diversion from what's happening in the real world. We're going to be talking about B2B social media marketing and how to think about it in 2021. I love this title slide. I love this presentation already. With us today, my good friend, Carter Hostelley. Carter, I've known for years, and Carter really has had a very substantial role in the success of this meetup. We're now in our 6th year. Carter's CEO of Leadtail, which is a social media marketing agency. Take it away, Carter, and thanks for being here today.
Absolutely. And in putting together this deck for everyone, I really did sort of reflect on, 2021 and the question about thinking about social. And it's just interesting to me as I thought about it, that more and more it's sort of feeling like literally we're going back to the future. In how we look at things, given our path to where we are today. But I always like to sort of start these sort of discussions with not presuming sort of folks understand, well, what is B2B social media? And the truth is, it includes lots of stuff that we kind of talk about, and at least from my vantage point, in working with lots of clients, that we view these all under the umbrella of B2B social. So all the stuff you would typically expect: monitoring the handles, drafting content, supporting PR, demand gen, and the marketing teams these days, really promoting a lot of virtual events, building community like Dennis and everyone else has done such a great job here. And literally yesterday, I added the last little check mark on crisis communications, because as everything unfolded, we literally sent out a note, Slack, to all the account managers to ping the clients and say, we're recommending stopping all posting. So all of that, typically you would think about under B2B social, but there's a lot of stuff that, I talk about and have been talking about over the last 24 months that traditionally weren't in there. So obviously the paid side of social, influencer marketing, I talk a lot about employee advocacy. Increasingly, executives are needing help on the social, social account-based marketing, and of course, social customer service. So there's sort of a lot under this umbrella when we talk about B2B social media. Now, at the most basic level, why are we having this conversation? Why are we, even caring? And it is because of what we all know. Everyone is on social. It's kind of funny. I had a slide from last January that We Are Social and Hootsuite put together, and it really showed sort of globally and the percentage everyone's on social globally. And I really went to look to see if there was an update, knowing that all the figures would be higher. And this is actually a slide from October 2020. But, the amount of folks that are on social, the amount of time we spend on social, how much we're accessing social via our phones, just say that this, for all of us B2B, folks out there, that this is obviously a world we need to play in. Our buyers are there, irrespective of who we sell to. There'll be different platforms they're on, et cetera, but they're active on social. Now, one of the things that I sometimes talk to folks about, and I should say, our client base primarily are tech companies, and we slant toward earlier stage and pre-public, though we have a number of public companies too, simply because, truthfully, they're more fun to work with. And if I ever have to deal with, uploading POs into Ariba one more time, I will scream. So, when we come into these, a lot of times there's sort of the question around when should a company do social or have it be a key focus. So I just put together this little slide as a way to think about it. And typically when you think about a brand new company, early stage, they're really trying to get the demand gen engine going. They're buying email lists, getting email marketing. They're starting to do some paid search. They're starting to think about SEO, which then takes them into product marketing and content marketing. And then somebody on the team somewhere says we should be doing some thought leadership, and lo and behold, I get a phone call, right? And social media comes in. Another way to look at it is, if any company out there is doing PR, there's a good chance they are or should be doing social. Okay. And I've also sort of learned from talking to, lots of folks that when a company is starting to move from product focused to brand focused, boom, once again, my phone starts ringing, right? So that tends to be a good part of the curve. Obviously, post-sale, retention, advocacy, all of those things kick in. But just sort of thinking about this brand marketing, product marketing, demand generation is what I'm giving a flavor of here. Now, when we think about, B2B social, we understand why we need to do it. We understand now's the time to really focus on it. Typically, the next question or thought is, well, which platform should we be active on? I will tell all of you, if I have one more question about should we be doing TikTok, and it's some enterprise SaaS company that sells into the CIO, but it's funny how I answered this question is, you know what? I answered this question 5 years ago, but it wasn't TikTok, it was Snapchat. Everybody was asking me about Snapchat, right? So the truth is the North Star on where you should be focusing your efforts is where your buyers are focusing their social activity. Okay, so I don't want to presume that B2B means we're all selling to, IT. So if a B2B client is selling into real estate agents or doctors or whatever, the question is, where are they engaging on social? And that's our North Star. That's where we want to be and where we want to prioritize. So as Dennis knows, we have a mutual good friend, Ted Rubin. And if anyone knows Ted, he's a top digital marketing influencer, 500,000 plus Twitter followers, former CMO, all of that stuff. And one of the many things I love about Ted is that he is always very quick to try out the new platforms. Okay, so when thinking about TikTok for today's presentation, I was like, let me go check out Ted's TikTok, right? And there he is. I believe that's with his niece, because I know both his daughters are, I believe, off to college. And he's got 100 followers on TikTok. And there he is. And no surprise, he's doing some sort of dance to music with his niece. Okay, so if I summed up, does TikTok make sense for B2B buyers? I would say it's really at the stage of old guys. Well, Ted may hear this, so let me say old but good looking guys with their family members dancing to music. Okay, so to me, 2021 still may be a little early for us B2B marketers to be focused on TikTok. Now, having said that, a little bit of inside information, TikTok for Business just hired in December their social media manager. So who knows, when I do this presentation next year, maybe it is time for TikTok. But nonetheless, when we think about the right platforms generally, it is our old favorites. LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter are still predominantly who we want to be thinking about from the B2B side. I will say that LinkedIn has done a lot of great improvements over the last few years. I'm all pro Microsoft buying them. At the time I was hesitant, but now I think they've really allowed them to make a lot of changes that are good. So definitely LinkedIn, and obviously Twitter and Facebook. I'm having a lot of conversations with tech execs around Facebook, because Facebook is bad, is sort of the party line now. But I always say that Facebook, there's still a reason that Facebook has an $800 billion market cap that's all ad driven. So we should continue to consider Facebook, if only because of the paid side of things. Others for sure to consider: YouTube, Instagram, even Quora, even Reddit, depending on the North Star of where our buyers are on social. I will tell you, under the thematic of what's old is new again, i.e. Back to the Future, during the pandemic, I have become a huge YouTube guy. And I really believe, both from a B2B marketer standpoint and just as a user of YouTube, that it is, I have become a total YouTube fan again. And as a matter of fact, I now include and consider YouTube part of B2B social for how we help clients, which is fairly new. So definitely YouTube. A lot of conversations with folks about Instagram. It's still some version of it. Does HR own it versus not? But these are other platforms to definitely consider. So we're on B2B social. We sort of know what platforms we want to be on. The next question I get a lot is how to measure success. Sidebar, I am so excited about Cobra Kai season 3. I have not started it. I'm sort of saving it for a moment, but big fan of Cobra Kai. So how do we measure success? The KPIs we always talk about with clients that tend to be good ones are followers, impressions, engagements, and engaged percentage. I am pushing and have the conversations with folks when they say yes, but if you only had to follow one metric, what would it be? It is the number of engagements. It is not engagement rate. It is the number of engagements, which I've got circled in green. Now, when we think about sort of benchmarking, because everyone has different, audience sizes, everyone is posting different frequency. I like to still benchmark around the engagement rate. And so when we look at all our clients and how they've been doing, and I've been doing this for a long time, it all comes around to, if your individual tweet or your aggregate of all tweets for your clients for the month are around 1% on Twitter, you're doing pretty darn good. LinkedIn 3.5, and I would say if you've got a smaller following, meaning 10,000 or less, 4% or better. And this is really the metric that has changed, I would say, fairly dramatically over the last 2 years. Where a couple years ago, I would have said maybe 2%, 2.5, lucky if you get to 3. And then Facebook around 4%. So these are some benchmark metrics to sort of keep in mind when you're trying to figure out, are you doing okay or not? So let's talk about, well, geez, if engagement is a North Star and we have some benchmarks in engagement rate, well, which posts drive engagement, right? That's the next thing to think about. So I did this exercise. I sort of looked at all our clients and sort of looked at, well, let me look at the performance of 2020, since we're now in January 2021. And let me see which posts did the best generally. And let me see if I could pull some thematics that would be helpful for everyone on this call. So I'm going to go through these, not in any necessary, special order, but just to give you a sense of what tends to perform the best. So no surprise, fun and by definition, engaging posts, land at the top. And these can be contests, obviously a contest plus a video in a way that's fun and ties into what was happening with everyone being stuck working from home. And they even put a cash prize on here, $2,500 for an office makeover. It had user-generated content. Someone would submit a photo or a short video of their workspace they were now stuck in, right? So, doing this sort of thing, no surprise, it was, definitely tops. And this company, Procurify, also put together a whole series of posts around this, right? And all of them did really, really well. Here's another example from our friends at Treasure Data. Look, you got to have content that at the end of the day helps your buyers do their jobs. Okay, that's one of the reasons why they follow, especially on Twitter, is to find good ideas, find good content. The other thing I would say that I just cannot emphasize enough, and I think everyone on this call understands it, is look, it's not all about your content. It's about whatever is helpful for the buyers. And this is a great example of sharing Content Marketing Institute article and tagging those folks, so you're shining the light on them. But at the end of the day, it's really helpful information for buyers. And that's what everyone on this call is about, from a content marketing standpoint too. Your customers have already invested in your product. They want to know what's going on with your product. They want to know when it's updated. So yes, product updates do really, really well, especially if you're selling into IT or tech communities. But I would say across the board, letting them know what is going on. We have some clients that are in stealth or don't want to publicize or don't want to talk about updates. And I'm like, you're crazy. Okay. Your clients and customers really want to know what's going on with your offerings. Big news, obviously, this is Verizon acquiring our client Blue Jeans, but it can be a new funding announcement. It could be a big partnership, making sure you've got a good cycle of news coming in. tends to do really, really well. This one, I really highlight for all the reasons we understand. Our friends over at Zora and Teen, the CEO, really embraced what was happening around Black Lives Matter and diversity. And they really took a leadership stance on this. I will say that the vast majority of our clients didn't. And I don't judge that one way or the other because it has to be authentic in who the leadership is. And Zora really embraced it. And it's one of the things that really, really blew up for them on social. Make it about others, as Dennis knows, and Tom knows, and Todd knows, anyone that's sort of chatted with us and knows us or has worked with us. The more you make it about others, funny thing happens, the more they make it about you. Okay, so building into the strategy, authentically helping others. In this case, our client A10 supports a foundation and backed it up with a check. All of that pushes the right buttons when it's done authentically. It should be part of the regular sort of program. Celebrate, okay? None of us had enough to celebrate in 2020, and any chance to celebrate really tapped into the humanistic of folks looking for some rays of sunshine in everything that was happening. This can be obviously the traditional holidays, it can be special holidays, it can be celebrating successes of employees, customers, partners, whatever the heck it is, reasons to celebrate, and sharing authentic photos always do well, especially when you're doing some nice shout outs. Building community. We're going to touch on this again a little bit later, but this again falls into the what is old is new again. It really is about supporting each other. And again, with this group, I don't have to really explain this because, as I said, Dennis and all of us have done such a great job building our community here. And I view myself as part of this community. But any events we've got going on, anything that is really about building and supporting a community, really, really works well. Giving back, we touched on this a little bit. A lot of our clients and a lot of brands are doing things within the community, authentically sharing that through the lens of not how great we are, but how employees are truly sharing, and the impact will continue to do really, really well. Showcasing, I've talked to folks a lot about this in 2020. We're really even more selective about who we use as vendors, individually and as decision makers ourselves. And we really want to align with brands that we like. And the best indication of a brand we like will be brands that showcase the people behind the brand. Okay. Back in the day, it was all about being professional in the corporate brand and all of that. Now it is about bringing the human face forward. And it really, really resonates well on social. And I want to leave you with this real default one, because in the world of B2B, we struggle with this. Just be human. Okay? Be human, show the human side of our brand. It's okay. Not only is it okay, we appreciate it. Our clientbuild.com does an amazing job. It's not only the baby picture. So, so keep procreating out there if you really want to build your community, I guess is another way to say it. Is they got the baby in the brand swag. Oh my gosh. Right. But this blows up every time, right? Anytime we're like behind on an engagement mole, I'm like, hey, can we get another baby picture? There's our cheat. But the main message is humanity needs to ring through the brand on the B2B side. Don't care if you're selling security software, don't care what it is, be human.
I'm a fan of puns too, so that's a great pun with the brand incorporated in the pun.
Yes. So that's a long wind up, but I think important wind up to the central question of how we should think about social media in 2021. So more video content, please. Okay. One of the things that's unique about social versus search, for example, and Rosemary, this may resonate with you a little bit. Search is intent driven. We type into the search box when we're on the hunt. Social is discovery driven. We all wake up in the morning. What's the first thing we do? We look at our phones, go to the Apple News feed, discover what is going on, right? Well, video is great for discovery content. And if you remember that stat I showed earlier, 99% of us are surfing social on our phones. Well, video works really well with phones. It's highly engaging if we do it correctly. And guess what? If there's one benefit that came out of 2020, it's, oh my gosh, we all created lots of video content. Okay? So all of a sudden we're armed with all of this. So all we have to do is get some snippets, 2 minutes or less. I always like to say, give me 3 snippets, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and 30 seconds or less. Even though TikTok is now made it so that what used to be the 15-second snippet, it's all about 6-second snippets now. But anyway, putting that aside, 2 minutes or less, that's what we need. And I want to throw this out, and to some people, it's like, oh my gosh, but our goal should be 10% of our social content should now be video. Okay, so we really got to get on this bandwagon. The next thing I want to say, and I touched on this, we got to focus on building community, not follower counts. Okay, followers are optics driven. I get it. I have conversations with CMOs about how our competitors have more followers. It drives me nuts. Okay, that's optics. Community is an asset. Okay, it is the foundation for advocacy and our brand longer term. How do we build community? It is really simple. We all know this individually because I see it on Twitter all the time as an example. Share the content of others. Thanks, folks, for sharing our content. Respond in a timely manner to comments and questions. What the heck? Show that we're being two-way. Ask questions and poll our followers instead of using social as a glorified email list to blast, right? Showcase members. That falls under the thematic. The more you make it about others, the more they'll make it about us. And guess what? Your engagement is going to go up and to the right. One-on-one conversations are back. Okay, remember one-on-one conversations on social and on the web? Okay, so it's like, shift from broadcast to one-on-one. Replies, comments, Facebook messaging. What's new, what's old is new again. This is the next frontier of social. Okay, and one of the ways that we're doing this a lot now is social media outreach as a way to break through the noise with influencers and also target contacts for those companies doing account-based marketing. Okay, we'll do social ABM campaigns where we're reaching out, for example, to invite someone to be on a podcast, to get a quote for a byline, to showcase them on a Q&A post. They're generating 20 to 60% engagement rates with exactly the people we want to engage. Right? Compare that to the engagement rates I showed at a platform level earlier in the deck. Okay, so one-on-one is definitely a great way to break through. Social advertising is now a must. Okay, we went through this curve. Rosemary understands we went through this curve long ago with search, right? SEO is great, but you really need to be doing some paid search too, right? Same with social. Okay, buyers are on social. We need to reach them beyond any audiences we've created. It's great for brand and demand gen. Okay. What we need to understand though is what I highlighted earlier is we jump right into LinkedIn with demand gen stuff. Don't be surprised when the math sucks. Okay. Because we've got to have them discover our brand, become interested in our brand, and then retarget them in for intent. Okay. So we just have to think about social advertising differently than search. Okay. Yes to LinkedIn. Okay. But people tend to over-rotate on LinkedIn on a paid and under-rotate on an organic. Definitely recommend start with Facebook and Twitter, figure out what works, and then retarget into LinkedIn. And also consider YouTube, as we've talked about before. YouTube is like the number one channel that B2B buyers actually use to research stuff. Okay, so we want to be thinking about YouTube advertising. And I throw this out as a belief, but knowing the audience we have here, I pose it as a question with a smiley. Okay, my belief is social advertising is really the new SEO. And part of that is I believe that the biggest competitor we now have on SEO is Google itself. And social advertising is a quicker and more cost-effective way to reach our target audience and drive them into our content. But post this presentation, happy to have sidebar conversations and wrangle. Rich, I'm thinking about you on whether this is true or not. Employee advocacy, we all have literally an in-house community with our clients at, B2B companies. Okay, I've already talked about building community. We already have a community, our employees, right? So getting them to amplify drives more reach and engagement. And guess what? A post shared by a person is actually more credible than a post shared by a brand that is pitching product. Okay. The thing we have to keep in mind with employee advocacy is you got to start with what's in it for the employee. Okay. So you got to have them and have the mindset authentically that this is about helping them build their professional brand. I always say, in talking about this with folks in the context of employee advocacy, I always say, look, right, back in the day, you advanced in your career based on who you knew. Now you advance in your career based on who knows of you. And so helping employees build their professional brand is a great way to help them grow and find more opportunities. And so when you frame it that way and understand that way, then you're going to realize you want to be selective about what you get employees to share. Because guess what? Dirty little secret. They don't want to spam their personal networks with your demand gen stuff all day long, right? So you want to think about that. The nice thing too is, even if it's a small company with only 10 employees, you can start to think about how to make it really easy for them to share. And increasingly, LinkedIn, as an example, with their new notify thing, are trying to also support us in getting employees to share. And guess what? It'll result in leads. I was talking to the head of growth marketing for one of our public company clients. And they said to me, one of the things that we want to unlock even further is employee advocacy. I said, tell me more. They said, well, based on UTM tracking codes and the fact that we look at first touch attribution, holy crap, we're driving leads into the funnel from employee sharing. So it drives more leads, so this is definitely something we want to be thinking about. So with that, I will stop, because Dennis knows otherwise I'll just keep rolling, and open it up for any sort of questions and leave it there.
So much, Carter. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
I just wanted to add something, Carter. Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So Carter, great point about YouTube. And the other thing about advertising with YouTube is it is so inexpensive. I mean,
Yes.
We're talking 10 cents to get someone to see your video. And if you optimize those videos, you really significantly increase your chance of getting in search result pages and people finding your videos.
Well, Rosemary, let me pile on, because a lot of people don't really understand how YouTube views are different than Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn views. And I'm just going to say it in one simple way. YouTube counts a view as 30 seconds. On social, a view is counted as 3 seconds. So you want to think about that per Rosemary's comment about 10 cents. And I found, 6, 7, 8 cents even to get a view
Yes.
off a B2B video. So I cannot agree more with Rosemary on those points.
I had a question. I was wondering if if you or anyone on the call differentiates between when, B2B customers' social media habits, if it's for personal versus work purposes.
Anyone on the call want to respond to that? That's a great question.
It doesn't matter.
It really depends on the industry. If you're marketing to marketers, you bet they're probably on social media. If you're marketing to manufacturing operations managers, your experience might be a little different.
I did an analysis one time in a strange industry. It was like biotech or something like that. And I found that of the top 10 companies, like 30 or 40% were on social in a heavy way. And then a lot were not there at all. So I felt like it was probably advantageous for those ones who were in social to be having tutorial videos, more personalized, approach to marketing. I think it was probably an advantage for them.
I'd say your absence might be conspicuous, right? Whether or not the intended audience you aim to meet are in the channels. it becomes almost a necessity of like, well, if we don't have a presence there, what are the risks? I had a question, Carter, about influencers.
Mhm.
You know how they have the saying that there's always a tweet, right? So I found this tweet from Dennis 3 years ago when you both came to VMware to speak at VM Innovate. And Carter, you gave a presentation on 3 truths about influencers. And I remember the takeaway was one, there are lots of influencers. We're all influencers, I think is what you told the group. And then you talk, this is kind of the Carter give before you get, which I think is your networking advice.
Make it all about others.
Right. What can I do for you?
Yes.
Right. And then third was, about the importance of relationships, but it's all about advocacy. So my question to you is 3 years later, any add or change about how we think of influencers and the role of B2B social?
I would just put an exclamation mark, and maybe knowing me, I put an exclamation mark 3 years ago. That means I would put 2 exclamation marks now and say that those are even more important. And it's beyond simply that social is by definition human, right? So if I took the word social out and put human, as our good friend Brian Kramer would say, it really is about human to human. I would say with everything we have all gone through and will most likely continue to go through in 2021, the need to be human and transparent and authentic and have empathy and help each other and help, spread the word however we want is more important than ever.
Yeah. Thanks. Great talk. Thank you.
And side note, if you're a user of Twitter and you tweet, chances are Rich will find your tweet 5 years later and share it.
I use it as a memory device. I'm old. I forget things.
Carter,
Yes.
can we see you on video now?
You can't, but thank you for asking.
Okay.
If you click on that tweet I just chatted, Dennis's tweet, it's a video, Carter. They could see you 3 years ago.
There we go. There we go.
Right.
Speaking of time travel, taking a look ahead, you've given me some idea when you talk about video engagement and interactivity. There's this project, you may have heard about it, the Holocaust Project, where they use artificial intelligence to interact with video recordings of the survivors of the Holocaust who have died.
Interesting.
What do you think of the possibility of using artificial intelligence to get your videos interactive?
Well, let me, that's a broader question. I definitely have some thoughts here. Let me open it up to see if anyone else wants to jump in on that, because that's a very thought-provoking question. No takers?
I don't know. I'm not sure about making it more interactive, but Gary, I think I did hear about that project. It was covered on 60 Minutes a couple of years ago.
That's right.
And it was amazing about all this art. So you interview someone for like 3 hours and then AI basically can figure out what they're saying. And then you ask a question and then it goes and figures out from all of that footage from all these people how to answer it. So it gives you the clip of the answer. It was totally amazing.
Far reaching.
Yeah, I think, and maybe this is another way to sort of pose the question to the team. I think the earliest indications of this really now are, to some degree, AI replacing all of our jobs as content marketers. And how do we feel about that, right?
Retirement. Sounds good.
That's February's talk, folks. Let's talk about that.
Right. I don't know. There's going to be certain aspects that no amount of AI will be able to suss out, such as sarcasm, idioms. I don't know, little nuanced things that just you need to have that human to human. I think maybe at scale, right? A lot of the box scores and sports reports I read are bot generated.
Hello.
But
Hello.
Hey, Jan.
Hi, sorry. I've been testing my microphone. I'm really, really sorry. I was trying to interject with a question, but I realized for some reason my microphone wasn't working.
We
And
can hear you now.
Oh,
Go for
yeah,
it.
I'm really
clear.
sorry. It's embarrassing. I was trying to test it and I thought, why is this not working? Carter, great presentation. Thank you very much. I have a fairly specific question. So my business is mergers and acquisitions. We sell businesses for business owners.
Yep.
And we've been in the business close to 20 years. And for many, many years, we've relied on referrals from attorneys and various other professionals. And that's really been our network and our mainstay. To expand our business, we are told that we need to do outbound marketing. Now we're on LinkedIn, we write articles, we post stuff, but we're told that we need to do get a curated list from some of these lead gen firms that's curated according to the types of software companies that we sell, for instance,
Yep.
technology companies, and then actually proactively send out stuff to them. To me, that seems a little unseemly. And aside from these lead gen firms that tell you to do stuff like this, I've never heard any professionals who are, looking to sort of sell high-end services like we are. I've never heard anything positive from any professionals in, my financial area. So I'd be really curious to get your feedback on that kind of outbound lead gen, if you will. Is that sort of yesterday's news, or is this something that is coming back because of pandemic?
I think it's all in context. So it's interesting. Obviously, just for this, I was on a call with a public company CMO and talking about this formula. And the formula is ABM to community to advocacy equals deal flow. The context of this conversation was how the SaaS model has to change. Okay. And so when you think about your question, understanding, which is the ABM piece, the account-based marketing piece, exactly who your target accounts are, because like many B2Bs, the buyer audience is fairly specialized. You may have a universe of 1,500 buyers, right? Not 100,000 or a million, right?
Right. And there's CEOs who own a certain size of business.
Yes. So once you know who they are, you literally can go, here are all the people we want in our community. Okay. You literally can build a Google Doc or a social CRM of these folks. You can look up their social handles or look up the people that report to them's handles, etc. Now, here is the part that everybody screws up that Rich touched on a moment ago. Okay, the formula is not ABM to community to lead gen, to demand gen, okay, to dialing for dollars. It is to advocacy. The question then is, how do you create advocacy? The simple answer is you like them so much that they can't help but like you back. The best way, as Todd knows, to like them is to do everything you can to help them, even if it isn't directly in your interest or even if you do not directly get a return from it. Nothing more I like than trying to find business for Todd, because I love Todd and I'm a big fan of Todd's. It doesn't matter to me whether you'll ever give me a business, it doesn't matter. That's not why I do it, right? So advocacy has to be true and authentic.
You gotta listen to us.
Yes, my experience, if you know who you're reaching out to, literally build a target list. And if we're talking social, then understand where they are and where they're active on social, and then figure out how to help them. The two best ways to help them are introduce them to people and raise their visibility. The best way to raise their visibility, sorry, go ahead. Was there a question?
Yeah, social media, marketing, social media.
Yeah. So you can, yes. So the best way to raise their visibility is to build your content roadmap around them. Okay. So I believe podcasts are the new blog. Part of that's because I've heard Rich on podcasts. Okay. And now you're able to reach out to them to be a guest on a podcast. At the end of the podcast, they're going to go, man, that was great. Tell me more about what you do. Right. You can get, so lots of ways, but your puzzle is, how do we make them champion us. A lot of folks think advocacy is post-sale. Bullshit. Okay. Advocacy is absolutely pre-sale. When I think of all the folks on the phone that I know that I will bend over backwards to help, and then I think how many of those I've actually done business with, advocacy is human, right? So you put those things together, it will result in deal flow. Okay. And that is the going forward way to do what you articulated as possibly the old world way to do it. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think I did something like that just yesterday. A software company CEO was referred to us by a law firm just before Christmas. We had a conversation earlier this week, and he said, you know, my real pressing problem is I need to understand my tax picture, and you know, how I'm going to get taxed on the sale of my business, and I'm really worried about taxes. I said, I'm happy to refer you a tax expert, which I did yesterday afternoon. And he's very happy about that. And I think yeah, so that's the kind of thing I think you're referring to, and really try to figure out what they need and how to help them. And I think the trick is how do you build your marketing organization that way? We all have SDRs and BDRs, and we've got account reps. And so how do you build it? So here's the thing I would pose to all of you. Like, folks say to me, hey, you do social media. I go, no, I don't. I'm a behavioral scientist. That's what I am. Interesting.
Okay. So everybody talks about the technology algorithms. I say I'm all about the human algorithm. So as Dennis knows, if you and I go to coffee for the first time, guess what? I am buying you coffee. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to buy you coffee every single time. Okay. And it is absolutely my pleasure to buy you coffee, but it's going to drive you nuts. You're going to go, he buys me coffee all the time. I got to do something for him.
I feel obligated.
That's the human algorithm. That is the first step toward understanding advocacy and how to make it organizational versus a good idea that we then go back to cold calling and blasting everyone. Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I've been there, Carter. You know, next time we go out to dinner, I'm going to make reservations. I'm going to pay before we even show up. Just letting you know.
Someplace really nice too.
Fair enough.
I had a quick question about content, actually.
Yes.
And that's just about like whether you should create content and share it across all the platforms, or how like platform specific you should be creating content, or if it's just a matter of a mix of both, or, you know, just sort of your recommendation there.
Yeah. And the trick here is volume. Okay. So if you're doing large volumes of posting, that's going to be different if you're doing less. Okay. But the first thing is you only need to worry about the platforms where your buyer or your audience is on. Okay. So I want to be very clear there. So that'll help narrow it down. The second thing I would say is when we think about Facebook, for example, you know, it used to be, how do you personalize it more? Because that Facebook is just another news feed. So truthfully, whatever we pop on LinkedIn, we're going to pop on Facebook too, and by and large the same way, right? So I would say it's less about how much I have to customize something. The Twitter, you're going to customize because it's different. Instagram, you're going to customize because it's different. But I want to say it's less about customizing and more about shifting the medium to how do we make the content more interactive. The first thing we all see on social is the graphic. Hey, how can I make that a video snippet? How can I make that a static image with an audio file? So when I think about time, I wouldn't spend extra time trying to customize things from some notion of how the platforms are different. Instead, I would go, okay, how do I shift to more interactive, you know, visuals and graphics and videos? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great response. Thank you.
Carter, will you be sharing your presentation? I'd like to share the wisdom with some of my partners, and I was trying to scribble down some notes, but I didn't do a very good job.
You know, Dennis brings me into these things, and so whatever Dennis tells me to do, I will do.
Yes. So if you shoot it over to me, Carter, I'll share it with the group.
There's your answer. So
awesome. Thank you so much. It's been really, really terrific.
And Carter, we had a related question from Carol in the chat. Unfortunately, I think Carol just had to drop, but I think she can hear your answer on the recording. You were talking about where your audience is, and I think you began this talk with be on the networks where your audience is. So Carol's question is, how do you figure out where they are and where is it? And for her clients, some don't use LinkedIn until they're looking for a job. So I guess two-part question.
Yeah, so the first part is, and I think somebody sort of threw it out there, there are a number of tools that can enable this and do some form of social listening. For those that are sort of more individuals or small companies that don't have sort of tools or marketing stack, it's as easy as going to LinkedIn or Twitter and typing in the SEO keywords you have and seeing what comes up in search. Okay, and does your audience sort of appear in the search feed, you know, or do they not, or is the content relevant, etc. And that'll start to give, like for example, I did exactly that on TikTok, because I had an assumption coming in, but anyone that knows me knows assumption's a bad word for me. So I'm like, let me test it and let me go into the search box and type in, you know, chief marketing officer. Let me type in, drop in, and see what showed up in the search results. And lo and behold, you know, nothing relevant seemed to show up, which was further evidence that this was probably not a social platform for the sort of B2B clients we have today. The second part of the question, Dennis, can you read it again for LinkedIn?
Yeah, she says that for her clients' targets, like their target customers, she believes they don't use LinkedIn until they're looking for a job.
I would say when you think about, you know, LinkedIn, I don't know what the latest stats are, so I sort of default to the average person spends about half an hour a month. Okay, but what you're really doing is you're really getting in front of those folks that are active on the platforms. And guess what? What I've learned over the last decade of social is those that are first active on the platforms today are tomorrow's influencers when everyone else moves onto the platforms and are active. Okay, so I would definitely not hesitate to make sure you're tapping into, if you're starting to see some of your audience on there, and especially if those that are on there look like they're on the path to become influencers.
Makes sense. I think we have time for one more question. Anyone out there? You can unmute yourself or use the chat.
What's the easiest way, Carter, to implement an employee advocacy program? I'm not talking for my company of one, because I think I got that handled, but for other clients.
Yeah, usually there's a curve, and if it is 100 or less employees, it can be as easy as, and we've all seen these, the weekly email newsletter that will have links for brand content and maybe some good articles that are third party that did well on the brand handle, right? So it'll be some form of, hey, you know, here's some great articles, and of course, you know, that may make sense for you to share, and make it as easy as possible for them to literally click a link that takes them to the LinkedIn post that they can click like. And so typically you start with that. The issue with that, of course, is there's no real tracking. You can't see who's sharing or not. So at minimum, maybe those links are bit.ly links, so you can see, are the employees engaging with it. And then as you start to get over 100 employees, you really want to start to think about, should there be one of these employee advocacy platforms? You know, and as Tom knows, you know, some of them are surprisingly cheap, like Agalamp, and others are really tuned toward the SMB market, you know, where maybe just a couple $100 a month for, you know, 120 people to be sharing. And then of course they go up to more sophisticated platforms like a Post Beyond, Dynamic Signal, you know, Bamboo, you know, that's part of Sprout Social, et cetera. But even then you may be spending, you know, $500 to $1,500 a month, which totally makes sense for, you know, enterprises to consider doing. The last thing I would say too is, as I mentioned, you know, LinkedIn is trying to enable that, because they sort of were trying to sell their employee advocacy solution, Elevate, for a couple of years and sort of punted on that, and are now building some of the functionality in. So LinkedIn now makes it easy to notify employees. So you can do a post and hit the old notify button. That will help sort of at least move that along a little bit. But I would start with the weekly or bi-weekly email to folks to let them know there's a new blog post, an earned media pickup, plus a couple of helpful third-party articles that did well on Twitter.
Two last things. So Todd, who just asked that question is our speaker next week. So check our meetup page. Todd and Bernie are going to be talking about Twitter chats. So if you wanting to learn how to participate in a Twitter chat, that'll be a great talk.
Yeah, not to
And
be
lastly-
competitive,
yeah.
Todd will crush my presentation. Okay, so do not miss Todd. He'll crush me.
He just set me up big time. Yeah, thanks a lot, Carter.
And lastly, Carter, for folks who want to learn more about you and Leadtail, where can they go?
Yep, leadtail.com, or hit me up on Twitter at Carter Hostelley, and I'll throw my Twitter handle on the front of the deck that you send out.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks so much, Carter, and thanks everyone for attending. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank you.
Dennis.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Carter.